Welcome to the Got Any Cows podcast. If you want to learn all you can about the beef cattle industry, this is the podcast for you. My name is Seth Christensen. My company has sent beef cattle genetics to 45 of the 50 states and 12 countries around the world. I've had the chance to learn from some of the best and brightest in the beef cattle industry, and I invite you to join me for those conversations here on the Got Any Cows podcast. Hey there, this is Seth Christensen with the Got Any Cows podcast. Appreciate you guys being here today. Wanted to let you know what we're doing today. Today we are going to be releasing an episode I recorded with the Meat Dudes. So Evan Carter from the Meat Dudes had reached out to me. They do a great job, unique podcast there, specifically focusing on Wagyu beef. So they're coming in with a lot of experience on the beef side of the Wagyu industry, whereas I'm coming in with more experience specifically on the live side and specifically with Red Wagyu or Akaushi genetics. So really, a unique opportunity there to sit down with Evan and talk about my experience from the live side of things, his experience from the beef side of things, and then how those two pieces relate. And I think it's going to be a valuable conversation to listen to take a look at how investing in things like our genetics, our Red Wagyu genetics, can yield that high quality beef, like what Evan with the Meat Dudes talks about. So without further ado, I invite you to listen to this episode of the Got Any Cows podcast that I recorded with Evan Carter of the Meat Dudes. And here it is.
Welcome to the Meat Dudes. I am Evan, and I'm super excited today to be joined by Seth Christensen of Christensen Genetics. Man, how are you doing today, Seth?
Doing fantastic, Evan. Appreciate you having me on.
Oh, man, I'm really excited. So, Seth, you are such a passionate voice in the Akaushi and Wagyu cattle industry already. You're focused heavily on genetics, breeding, and helping producers improve their herd quality. And you also host a podcast called Got Any Cows, where you dive into cattle genetics, ranching, and have conversations with producers all over the industry. And I love it because I feel like we do one thing here, we talk to more of the public, and then you really help the industry. And so I'm really excited to have you on, man. And I want to get right into it. And I want to ask you what your definition of Wagyu beef is.
Yeah, no, fantastic question, and appreciate you having me on, Evan.
Yeah.
Looking at Wagyu beef at large, I mean, Wagyu is going to be such a broad spectrum of answers. You know, Wagyu can apply to anything that's got some Japanese origin to it. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, we've seen Wagyu applied to everything from an Arby's burger that's going to be maybe a quarter Wagyu kind of a deal and very much a commodity end of the spectrum, all the way on up to A5 out of Japan. So all sorts of different things can fall under that blanket category. But Wagyu in its most basic sense just means Japanese cow. So anything that touches that is going to technically land within that category of beef. And that's where I'm so glad to see you guys doing the work you do with the Meat Dudes to help people understand what that is. You know what I mean? And that there are a series of answers, all of which are correct as far as what Wagyu is, but helping people differentiate that and understand that. And I think that's a fantastic thing to help folks understand the beef end of the spectrum, whereas my work could be more so with the cattle and the live animal.
Yes. No, I mean, you hit it right on the nail there, man. Like, our mission is really to, let people know that Wagyu is a spectrum. And it goes, like you said, from A5 in Japan all the way to F1 cross raised in the States or raised in Brazil or raised in Australia or South Africa, right? And there's also so many cuts inside the cow, and there's more stakeable items in a Wagyu cow. And, you got your full blood Denvers to maybe your F1 cross New York strip to your purebred Bavette. And so already it's a spectrum. We like to tell people you can find something in this whole Wagyu spectrum that you're going to enjoy. But something that we don't talk about all the time is that within Wagyu, there's different breeds. And so today we're going to focus on Akaushi because that's your specialty, otherwise known as the Japanese Red. And I'm excited to learn more because I really want to just do a deep dive into it and get all your opinions on it and get like the facts out there between, the differences between the black and the red and just the whole breed in general. So for people hearing the word Akaushi for the first time, like, what exactly is it and how is it different from Japanese black Wagyu that we mainly see over here in the United States?
Absolutely. So Akaushi literally just means red cow in Japanese. So very, very straightforward as the
All
term
right.
Wagyu is. So literally just red cow. So it is a separate and distinct breed from Japan. So if you look at the two different breeds, the Japanese black and then the Japanese red or Japanese brown, which would be the Akaushi cattle,
Mm-hmm.
both of them are going to give you that really high quality eating experience with some differences, with some nuances between the beef and some pros and some cons to either option there. And then the live animals are going to be distinct animals. They're going to be a little different as to the rate at which they gain. They're going to be a little different. If you were to look at them in person and you look at those animals, you could see if you stood a black Wagyu and a red Wagyu animal side by side, or an Akaushi animal side by side, obviously the color is different, but the differences don't end there. They are separate and distinct breeds. So the best comparison I have found for people that are more familiar with cattle or with the livestock end, or that are coming from the world in which I operate, I guess, with the live animal, would be if you look at the Angus and Hereford breeds, which would be very, very common, very, very, established breeds of beef cattle in the United States. Both of those breeds are British breeds, so they came from the same part of the world and are going to produce a relatively similar end product, not the same, but similar. But they are two separate and distinct breeds. So Angus and Hereford, they're both British, but they are separate breeds. And Akaushi and Black Wagyu are both Japanese breeds. They're both going to produce Wagyu beef, but they are separate and distinct breeds of cattle.
Yes. Okay. So the Japanese black is most of the Wagyu that you see in the U.S. is Japanese black. Is most of the Wagyu in Japan Japanese black, or is it more evened out over there as well?
Yeah, so the Japanese black are going to be the dominant breed. You're going to see more of those cattle. If you look at the number of original imports, I'm not going to say, exact number, but based on what I've seen as far as imports, the animals that left Japan and came to the United States, you'd be roughly 150 black Wagyu animals. You'd be roughly 20 all in, all done, red Wagyu or Akaushi animals. So that you would see significantly more black Wagyu influence here in the United States. I'm not going to speak for Japan and for their industry, but I would say that's going to be reflective overall of what you'd see coming out of Japan as far as the black Wagyu being dominant there as well.
Okay. So what made you decide to focus on Akaushi cattle specifically instead of going maybe the more common Japanese black?
Yeah, so for me as a livestock producer, and I'm so glad to be here with you, someone coming in from the meat end and with your expertise, your set of experiences coming from the beef end, and then I guess approaching the live animal. My experience would be just the opposite. So I'm coming from the live cattle, where all of my focus is on the living, breathing animal, and then I really, truly am still educating myself on the finished product end of things. So an exciting conversation to have here. But relative to your question, why Akaushi? What got me in Akaushi? So my background would be more so in Angus cattle, so a lot more common breed of beef cattle in the United States. Kind of the baseline, that'd be the dominant breed of beef cattle in the United States is Angus. And so I'd had requests for years from people saying, hey, we'd like to get into Wagyu, right? We'd love to have the beef. Everyone's heard about it. Everyone would love to try it. Like, there's not anybody you'd run into. You say, hey, would you like to try Wagyu beef? They say, oh, no, I wouldn't like to try that. Everyone would like to try Wagyu beef.
Exactly.
And for me, part of my challenge as far as, entering that Wagyu beef realm, like I mentioned, the red Wagyu or Akaushi and the black Wagyu cattle are distinct animals. They're different animals from a live animal perspective. So on the plate, they're going to be quite similar. And again, some differences there. But both produce Wagyu beef, but they're quite a distinct animal. So when I had people say, hey, I'd love to get this Wagyu beef, I said, look, I'd love to sit down and eat it with you. I love that finished product. Wonderful eating experience. But I don't know that the black Wagyu cattle, from a production standpoint, fit what I was targeting with the live animals, right? Your black Wagyu, they are a separate and distinct animal. Your growth curve is going to be distinct. The physical body type, as far as what the animals look like in the flesh, is going to be distinct. Or I should say more different from conventional breeds like Angus than what red Wagyu or Akaushi is. And so for me, it actually ended up being there was a day that there was a local hay farmer here in Idaho that said, hey, I am looking at getting into these Akaushi cattle. And he didn't know cattle at all. He just knew hay and wanted to find a way to improve the value of that, running it through these high-end cattle. But he says, I need someone to come source or sort on these cattle for me. So he said, hey, I'll hire you for a day. He says, come in and be my genetics expert, and sort these cattle and get me these Akaushi cattle. And I'd heard of them, but had never seen the Akaushi animals. And this is at a point in time where, I mean, like I said, years of requests for Wagyu beef, but I just hadn't found the animals, the live animal that maybe fit as far as a way for me to get to that Wagyu quality beef endpoint. And I went up this day with this hay farmer, and I went up, frankly, expecting to see cattle that looked like the Japanese black, right? That might be a little frailer build or a little slower growth, just a distinct animal. They're a separate animal from the conventional beef breeds. And when I rolled into this pen of calves, and saw a pretty darn impressive set of calves. These have been F1, so half Akaushi cattle. And I asked the operator there, I said, so where are your Japanese cattle? I was looking for these, frailer built, slower growing things. And he said, no, these are them. And I mean, that was the light bulb moment for me. I mean, that was the moment where I said, look, we can get this Wagyu quality beef, right? Or we can get this above and beyond beef eating experience.
Yeah.
But we can get there with cattle that are more like unto the Angus, or more like unto the Hereford, or more like unto these conventional breeds, a little bit faster rate of gain, a little bit more muscle mass. And for me, that was an aha moment of saying, hey, there's some unique value to these animals when they're a beef product and when they're a live animal. And that's why I'm in Akaushi as opposed to Black Wagyu.
Yeah, I do hear that a lot. I do hear that a lot from the Akaushi ranchers, that they're like, they are very rancher friendly. I have heard that a lot, that they're a lot easier to manage and to grow. That's something that, whenever I talk to somebody, they bring that up a lot. They're very proud of that. I'm like, okay, I hear it. What about, so a little bit on the eating experience though, if you want to get into that, like what would be some of the main differences in the eating experience? They're both going to be marbled because they're Wagyu, and they're both going to be tender, correct? Yeah. Perfect. So what is it? How is it different?
Yeah, so they are definitely both. I will absolutely say both produce a wonderful beef eating experience. Both Red and Black Wagyu put an awesome steak on the plate. And, I think it's important, and like, again, just to complement the work you guys are doing, to educate people that, hey, there's a whole series of different options here, and there's not a one size fits all in Wagyu, right? Because there are differences. There's differences between how these cattle are bred, like we're talking here with Akaushi and Black Wagyu. There's differences in how you feed these cattle. There's differences in age or weight at harvest, difference in how you cut them, difference in how you cook them. And all of those things are going to impact that final beef eating experience. So when we look at the difference between Red and Black Wagyu, I would say the commonality between the two, in both cases, it is going to be above and beyond conventional beef, right? It is in both cases, Red or Black Wagyu. I mean, it's fantastic. Like there is no going back. I mean, once you get into Red or Black Wagyu, in both cases, I mean, I went from, frankly, any three-legged Holstein would work. I mean, any junk cull cow was fine growing up. I mean, now we're ruined. We're total meat snobs.
Absolutely.
Both produce an awesome beef eating experience. Some of the differences you'd see between the two, I mean, if you're chasing just absolute maximum marbling, the Black Wagyu is probably going to be the more ideal of the two fits. If the whole goal is just marbling on marbling on marbling, and it's okay that we're going to sacrifice some things on the live animal side, then Black Wagyu is probably the better fit there, right? So looking on the plate, the most wildly marbled steak is probably going to be your Black Wagyu. The Red Wagyu is distinct though, and for me is my preferred eating experience of the two. And again, for me as an individual, and that's where I think it's so important for people to understand, it is not a one size fits all. It is not A5 or A5, right? There are different fits and different applications for these things. And for me, I prefer a little bit beefier flavor profile. I prefer something that is, I mean, that you can tell this is a steak, right? When we get all the way into the Black Wagyu, the Japanese have done such a wonderful job of producing, a unique beef eating experience. I mean, if you go to Japan and consume beef, you're going to take little tiny slices and you're going to flip it either side on a hot plate and eat a little tiny slice, right? And it's so rich and so incredible, and they've done this wonderful job, right? But frankly, I'm a red-blooded American male, and I want a steak on the plate.
I know.
And if you take a full-on A5, it's a lot. I mean, I'm not saying it's not awesome, but that's a lot. And for me, the Red Wagyu ends up sitting in this, or this Akaushi end product, sitting in this wonderful spot for me and for my palate. And I'm not claiming to be any chef by any means, but for me, when I sit down to dinner and I want to eat a quality steak, you've still got that solid beef forward type flavor. I mean, it is above and beyond what Angus is going to do, but then it is still in the realm of reason. It's still a steak. we haven't crossed over into this whole separate realm of this A5 type finished product. So that's what I really enjoy about consuming a red Wagyu steak. It's all my wife will let me put in our freezer now.
No, I get it. And that's why I love that the Wagyu is such a spectrum. And it's like I get upset. I don't get upset, but like I get annoyed when people say, oh, I don't like wine, or I don't like, a whiskey. And you're like, well, there's so many different types, there's such a spectrum of how, where it's raised in the terroir. And we're experiencing that right now with what we're doing is we're creating a Wagyu beef map from all over the US, and where people can search their favorite Wagyu beef. They'll search, I want Akaushi, I want grass-fed, I want F1 cross, I want these genetics. And these are going to be, registered by an association and then approved by us. So we make sure that people get amazing Wagyu that's verified, basically. But also, we want to showcase that there's so many different types. That's why I love talking to you about this, because like you said so many times there, that this is great for me. Some people may love a full blood black New York, and that's all that they want to eat. That's totally cool too. So I love to have an F1 cross Denver sometimes. I might want to have a 50% black, 50% red, full blood Wagyu, bavette, or flank steak or something. Like, there's so many options, and it's just like, it's incredible to me that we're kind of like, we're starting to push this out a little bit more, because the general public still has no idea. They think it's A5 or it's fake. Most people, right?
Right. No, absolutely. Yeah. I so appreciate, I just to reiterate, I think for the third time, but I think it's wonderful what you're doing, because I think, when I look at, so for me in ag, I'm in the 2% of the United States population that touches food production, right? The other 98% of the U.S. population is on the consumption end. Totally. And if in their head that Wagyu means, well, it's A5 is Wagyu and everything else is fake, you know what I mean? Or it's not A5. And I think it's good to understand those differences, right? Yeah. But to understand that there is a place for Wagyu, and for me and what I prefer to eat, my favorite place is in between the 2 points. It's not the conventional or commodity beef or Angus, which would be which still is a great steak, of course, but it's more the baseline. It's what people are used to in the United States. But nor is my favorite thing to eat all day, every day, A5. Mine sits in between the 2 points. Yeah. And I think that's what makes these Akaushi unique, because we're saying, hey, these can marble and produce that finished eating quality that is above and beyond what I can get even with quality Angus cattle, which I still breed. But then my growth curve and some of those convenience traits and things for the live animal are above and beyond what I could get from the black Wagyu options. And so it fits in a really happy spot for me as a producer and consumer of beef. And I think it's great to help people understand what that is.
No, and that's kind of why we came to the scene here. And like you said, there's 2% of people that are producing, and then 98% of consumers. And especially with Wagyu, it's such a young industry. Granted, a few animals came here in the 70s and then legally came here in the 90s, but still, to the general public, it is a very, very fresh new industry in the United States. And so people are starting to hear those buzzwords, and they haven't heard them enough. So they start to, get the misconceptions in their head. So we got to keep kind of reiterating this, that it is a spectrum. I get comments all the time that, Wagyu in America is fake, or somebody the other day said Wagyu isn't a breed. And I'm like, okay, like, I understand that there's breeds within a breed, but like, are we trying to, what are we doing here, dude? Like, you're in the Wagyu industry. Are we confusing the hell out of people? Like, they already think it's fake. So why are we arguing with each other about this verbiage and that verbiage? Like, we need to just make it as simple for people to understand. Like, red Wagyu is going to be maybe not as marbled as the black, but it's going to have a really amazing eating experience for somebody who doesn't want to have super marbled beef, and it's going to be super tender and maybe even a little bit beefier. And then the black is going to be very marbled, and it's going to look beautiful, and it's going to shine on your plate when you for a great celebration. And there's just going to be these differences, and that's okay. And doesn't mean that one's better than the other, right? Or one's fake. Oh yeah, Wagyu. So
for sure. And and when you and I had first talked, and talked about getting on and doing this podcast, I think I'd shared the story with you about the tequila distilleries down into Mexico there. And I'll share that here just because I think it drives home this point of it being different is okay, or there's some different approaches to all of the above, right? Different, even within black or red Wagyu, right? Each of those breeds is separate and distinct, but the very, very, very best red Wagyu, as far as marbling, will out marble the bottom end of, again, a spectrum within the Black Wagyu, right? I mean, so if we take, now we're breaking it clear down to the realm I operate in, right? Of genetics. There's a scope there too, right? There's Red Wagyu that are geared more towards growth or geared more towards marbling. Same with Black Wagyu. There'd be Black Wagyu that are geared more towards growth or more towards marbling, or a series of different traits that we as breeders select for. But to come around to that story from Mexico, because I do think it illustrates exactly what you're talking about here. I went down and judged a show in Mexico. So I was there just on a cattle trip. And while I was there, I was in Guadalajara. So we're in the state of Jalisco. Yeah. And all of your tequila in the world, for it to truly be tequila, comes from right there. Like, I mean, it's like you talk about champagne, it has to come from France, right? Or else it's whatever champagne not from France is called. I don't know. And tequila, I mean, there were 1,000 different brands of it right there. I mean, all right on top of each other. And how could so many different brands, they're all tequila, but how could so many different brands exist? And it was so interesting for me. This distillery we went to was taking it above and beyond, rather than just say, hey, this is the brand of tequila, or this is just the year or the vintage of tequila. They were stamping right on the bottle. I mean, literally the field it came from, you know, because every little bit of the production of any given food product does impact the final eating experience. And so, or in this case, the final drinking experience. And so looking at this tequila that they were distilling, I mean, they were talking about it came from this place on this year, bottled in that location, you know, and all those things are going to nuance that final consumption experience. And so talking about, you know, Black Wagyu, Red Wagyu, these different breeds, or different, again, even individuals within the breeds, right? We're starting all the way clear back at the genetics realm. I mean, there's an entire industry where I make my living that's in genetics, right? Yes. So even just selections within the breed, all of the differences between individuals inside of Red Wagyu, right? Yeah. Well, I mean, for case in point, there's a bull that we use that at the Houston Livestock Show actually out-marbled all of the Black Wagyu entrants for that individual, right? So I'm not going to say, I'm going to say as a breed, your average Black Wagyu is going to be higher marbling than your average Red Wagyu, while both are above and beyond the average Angus. But then for individuals within it, you can have the very top end of the spectrum maybe crosses over the bottom end of the Black Wagyu spectrum. Totally. But I mean, all of what I do in genetics impacts the eating experience. All of what somebody does in feeding impacts the eating experience. All of what somebody does for butcher work, and then all of the work that you guys do. I mean, you talk about the way things are distributed or the way they're prepped or whether it's fresh or frozen, all these different things impact that eating experience. And I think it's okay to lean into that instead of saying, hey, it has got to be, there's only one right way to breed them and there's one right way to feed them or harvest them or one right way to eat them. There are a fleet of options. And I love what you're doing, like with your Wagyu map, to say, hey, these are different products. They're all Wagyu. But they are different products, right? With different things going on at each location. And it will give you a different eating experience. And what is the best for one person isn't necessarily the best for the next. And that is okay. I think people should lean into that.
Exactly. I love it. No, you're totally right. And, you know, that is a big reason for the map, because, you know, we were down at CattleCon and we were cooking 100 Wagyu steaks from 8 different ranches all over the US. And we did 100 steaks on one pan in 2 days. And we realized they cook differently, because this Oklahoma full blood cooked differently from this Florida F1 cross to this Indiana, you know, barley finished, right? I mean, just the way that they're finished, the way that how long they're on pasture, everything tastes different, it cooks different, and there's so many nuances in this. And these were all just Japanese black. I don't think we had any Akaushi that day. So I mean, yeah, there's the spectrum is wild, and that's why I love talking about. I love hopefully getting the message through to people that there's more than just one way to do it. And like you said, the way that you cook it, the way that it's packaged. I mean, from what you do all the way till it gets to the plate, there's so many different things that could happen, and that's what. You know, that's what makes it special. That's what makes it different. That's just like in Jalisco making the tequila. I mean, it's just there's so many different ways to do it. It's not just, oh, tequila comes from Mexico. Like, whoa, no, like, I mean, technically, yes, you're right. But like, what about how do we get it from the agave plant to, you know, to your cup and then everything in between. Right. So.
Well, and there wouldn't be 1,000 brands that existed there if only one way worked. You know what I mean? If it has to be this way, or that is all, you know, and all 1,000 of those are right there. And there's enough differences to drive demand for 1,000 different brands of tequila right there. You know, and I think it's okay that people say, hey, don't just try to be Japan. Like, frankly, if all somebody wanted was Japanese A5, they're better off to just buy Japanese. If that's what they want, it's great. There's nothing wrong
Totally.
with that. Go buy Japanese A5. Why does everyone else that ever produces a beef product, period, that happens to have some Japanese genetics in play, need to be Japanese A5? I mean, if all you're trying to be is a ripoff of what they already are, why would someone not just go there? I think it's okay to lean into, hey, Oklahoma does it different from Indiana, does it different from Florida. I'm here in Idaho, right? We have different genetics, different feed, everything else. And that you can lean into that and say, this is what our ranch provides for a beef eating experience. When people come here to Idaho, they're gonna eat a red Wagyu steak if they come visit my ranch, right? So it's gonna be distinct genetically. It's gonna be specifically genetics from my ranch, right? Or things produced right here.
Yeah.
So distinct there. It's gonna be finished on a different ration just based on what's available here in Idaho. So really heavy alfalfa influence for us. We're a major alfalfa producing area. And then I actually cook. I cook in the sous vide, and so not everybody's going to do that. Not everybody's going to like that. I don't claim at all that is the way to do it, but I do say I am not a chef, right? And sous vide is idiot proof, which is awesome. Like there is no way to ruin a sous vide steak.
Love it.
And so while someone here is going to be eating this red Wagyu steak through the sous vide, we're going to cut through a series of different cuts so they can get a feel for the different cuts on the individual animal. Those cuts are so distinct, right? On the exact same animal. But to give people a feel for that, now I'm not going to say that is the very best beef they've ever had anywhere. It may or may not fit anyone's palate but mine, but it will be distinct to this ranch.
Yeah.
And that's what I encourage our clients that are buying cattle from us and working to produce their own beef. Lean into what makes your beef unique, right?
Yeah.
People don't come to you to get the same thing they got somewhere else. They come to you to get what you have to offer. And I think it's okay to lean into that.
I love that, man. And I've always kind of said that I love the American Wagyu because it's very boutique-y from wherever it's at, right? And I used to say kind of Australian is a lot more consistent. And that's great too. And
yeah.
I think what I love about the US is that it's so many different climates and feed styles and all the different genetics, you know, and I love that. Yeah. Oklahoma does this and Indiana does this and LA does this and all throughout. I mean, we have 4 or 5 people on the map that are going to be from Texas, and they all taste differently because of how they finish and where they're located in Texas and the type of genetics that they're using, right? It's not just Japanese black and Japanese red. There's genetics, like you said, within those breeds. And so people that I talk to would say, you know, I love this genetic. This is the best. And the next person I talk to, I love this genetic. This is the best. And I love that because it really showcases like what people do, what they love to do and why they're doing it, and how they're finishing with their feed, and they're trying to create something on the at the end of the day that they love, that they're proud of, that they can feel good about. And I think that's beautiful, man. I think that it's like that's why Wagyu is such a spectrum. It's gonna taste differently wherever you go, man. And like we keep saying, that's okay. It's totally okay, man.
Right. Yep, absolutely.
You know, Akaushi, you know, gets talked a lot about its fatty acid profile and health benefits. Where do you kind of fit? I like to ask a question. Where do you fit on the whole health benefit kind of conversation?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'll tell you, I mean, I think one of the things I most appreciate about kind of the health benefits piece for me, now, I don't claim to be a health guru, right? I mean, my body style or body type would be like curvaceous at best, you know. I wouldn't exactly call myself athletic, right? So I'm not going to come on here and pretend to be a fitness influencer because I'm not.
Yeah.
But when I look at the health benefits of this beef, I think one of the things that's fun and unique for me, just on the consumer end of things, is, in most cases when it comes to food or food choices, period, it can be healthy or it can be delicious. It is an either or proposition. I mean, quite often it is healthy and it is gross.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Or it is delicious and it's trying to kill me, you know? And that's one of the things I most appreciate about Akaushi beef is we say, hey, not only is this healthy, but it is also delicious, right? And sits in this kind of unique spectrum to say, hey, rather than have to be an either or proposition, which with most food choices, you kind of got to pick, you know what I mean? Do you want it to taste good or do you want it to be good for you? And this is such a fun and unique space to say, hey, this is both healthy and delicious. And what a unique product offering in that sense.
I know. And it is, you know, we get into it a little bit where I'm trying to not not just claim all this stuff, but kind of like try to get into a little bit, see what people's perspectives are about it, because I feel like there's a lot of information out there. I talked about this with Dave from Booth Creek. He's like, there's a lot of information out there. We can pull studies and say, yes, this is fact, and this is fact, and this is healthy, and the fatty acid profiles and the balanced omegas and all that stuff. But I still feel like to the general public, it's not there yet. Like they don't believe it yet. And maybe we just need to do a better job of compiling that information and going, okay, this is it. And I know a couple people like the World Wagyu Council, they're really working on like creating a document, pulling a lot of stuff together to like kind of push that out even more to the general public, because once people do realize that it is, as healthy, or maybe as healthy as a salmon fats, and avocado and olive oil, maybe they'll be a little bit less discouraged to try it. Because right now, if you hold up a raw steak, black or Akaushi to somebody, they're going to be like, that's fatty and that can't be good for me. But all this stuff coming out, man, I don't know. I think once it does come out, once it's like finalized and we can really just get it out there, I feel like it's just such a game changer. It would just be.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, it's we're definitely swimming upstream a little bit on that one. I mean, we got 50 years of I don't know what the proper term would be, but I guess the perception that fat is bad, right? I mean, especially if you go back as far as, like the 80s, et cetera, really pushing lean proteins, and that's still definitely prevalent. I mean, even in some of these health type circles are saying we're going lean, right? Because I mean, frankly, like if I'm sitting and I'm looking at health or looking at athleticism or my lack thereof, right? Like what I'm targeting in myself, right? Or in my body would be lean, right? And so when you say, well, we're going to consume fatty, but it's going to be good for you, I think it can be hard that there's maybe some pre-established misconceptions saying like, well, because there is fat, it cannot be healthy. Yeah. Right. And I think, helping people understand the benefits of those different monounsaturated, saturated fat ratios. Yeah. And like you mentioned, the different fatty acid profiles. And it is just a completely distinct product. I mean, if people have the chance to look at, truthfully, in any Wagyu beef, right, and more so the further, I guess, up that spectrum you get as far as more marbling, any and all Wagyu beef is going to be different to look at. Yeah. It's going to have a different fat melting point. It's going to be chemically different, right? There's some different health benefits that way. It's going to look different, smell different, taste different. Like it is a different product. And I think if people can understand, hey, there's an opportunity here in Wagyu at large to produce a superior product. And for me as a live cattle producer or genetics producer, there's a way to do that cost effectively and rancher friendly, to use your term there, as far as some easy to handle cattle. It makes it a really nice entry point in the Akaushi cattle for that 98% of people that haven't ever engaged in production agriculture, to say, hey, these are a pretty darn easy or user-friendly way to get into producing a genuinely superior, healthy, delicious beef product.
No, man, absolutely. And back to your point about, a lot of people raising Wagyu for the most marbling. I totally agree with you when we're talking about how it's going to be, something for everyone. And we still need to make sure that the Wagyu tastes good. And that's what, we got to raise for flavor and not just marbling. And I think sometimes within the industry, we get a little crazy and we're like, hey, guess what, guys? Look at this, and it's like, man,
we're American, so right? More is always better.
Right? I love it. And, that like most of the people out there are not looking for that. Or it's a total celebration thing. And that's awesome. So, do you think the future of Wagyu in America, I guess this is my question, is going to be more about finding your preferred style of Wagyu instead of just chasing the highest marbling possible?
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. Without question, unequivocally, yes. Yeah. I mean, for me, and again, I'm just going to use, my preferences as one person. I'm not going to say I define the market, because I don't. But for me personally, there is a threshold on how much marbling I want in a steak, even though it is nutritious, even though it is delicious, even though it can be a wonderful beef eating experience in its own right, but it's a separate and distinct product. Once a certain threshold is crossed, we're going a lot more towards like, hey, we're going to eat this like the Japanese eat it, which is not a steak on the plate. right? Little itty bitty slice, hot plate either side. And it's a different, great in its own right, but it's different, right?
Yes.
And so if we're looking at how Americans prefer to produce beef or consume beef, or at least how I prefer to consume beef, there is a threshold as far as we get to a point where we say, hey, the whole point is not just more marbling, more marbling, more marbling, more marbling. Past a certain point, for me personally, I still want, like, if I wanted a cube of butter, I'd have ordered a cube of butter. I want
Right.
I want a steak on the plate, right?
Yeah.
And so while I don't want to take anything away from the folks that are going to pursue a max marbling scenario, and I wish them all the best in pursuing that target market, I do feel like for me and for my clientele, that there is a threshold to say, hey, we want maximum beef eating experience or beef eating quality, and not just max marbling. Like max marbling and max beef eating experience, I wouldn't say are necessarily 100% the same thing.
Yeah. No, I agree, man. And you know, this is a fun thing. I kind of like to get into this. You know, there's so many misconceptions out there about Wagyu, and you know, it's too expensive. It's overly rich. It's only from Japan. It cannot be raised in the United States, right? All this stuff. But what about Akaushi? Are there like, do you hear any like crazy misconceptions all the time about just like specifically Akaushi?
Yeah. I mean, I would say, and this is one of those, you know, we talked about kind of some of that infighting you'll see between Red Wagyu and Black Wagyu, which I'm completely on the same page you are. I mean, the last thing we need to be doing is tearing each other to shreds inside of the Wagyu beef community.
Right.
It's already this tiny, itty bitty little corner of the universe. Like, we don't need to be throwing each other under the bus, right? There is a place for both of these breeds. But I would say one of the misconceptions would be that, like, hey, this is a lesser beef, right? I mean, we talked about the Black Wagyu, like, if the goal is just straight max marbling, that is probably the fit, right? Is to go with that Black Wagyu approach. But to come around to our conversation we just had, max marbling and max beef eating quality experience, or maximizing the enjoyment of that beef eating experience, not necessarily one and the same. So I would say the misconception would be saying, hey, if I go with Akaushi or I go with Red Wagyu, that I am producing a lesser quality beef, you know what I mean? Or that this is all, we went with the next best thing, or we went with it because it was cheaper to produce or easier to produce. This isn't as good. It's just not true. It's different, right? That they are different things, right? But it's like saying, like, I mean, you've got a hammer and you've got a screwdriver, right? One puts in nails and one puts in screws. And if somebody sits there and says, well, a hammer can't be any good, it doesn't put a screw on the wall. You know what I mean? Or vice versa.
Exactly.
It's just not true, right? That they're different tools. They do different things well, and it just depends on what your target is and what you're trying to do. And for me personally, you know, you're not giving up beef eating experience by going with Red Wagyu or Akaushi rather than Japanese Black, right? Two different breeds, two different tools, both have value, both have their place. And for me personally, I really like being in that full blood or purebred Red Wagyu or Akaushi space, where they are a remarkably consistent product from a genetic standpoint, right? We don't deal with, once you start into crossbreds or F1s, you're invariably going to have some inconsistencies. Now, there's benefits to combining breeds. There's reasons to combine breeds. There's value there too, but you are going to have some inconsistencies because that calf can trend towards what its mother is and towards what father is. And if they're completely different animals, you're going to get some inconsistencies in the finished product. But I really like, if you get that Red Wagyu in a purebred or full blood application, I say it's going to be remarkably consistent. It's a wonderful beef eating experience. These are great cattle to be around. And we're okay with the fact that maybe it's not max marbling, but you're not getting a lesser quality beef because you went with Akaushi instead of with Black Wagyu.
Yes. No, I'm glad you made that clear, because I do think that, sometimes I hear that too, that it's like the little brother, and you're like, well, actually,
right. Yeah.
It's because, I mean, I don't always enjoy just a completely marbled, Japanese Black. Sometimes I'm like, okay, like, it tastes good, but I can only have a little bit, and I want to find that perfect mix, and also whatever mood I'm in. Like, we got some little New York strips from someone who was it? I think it was Prime Valley Wagyu in Indiana, and they was these little strips, and they were full blood black, and they were super marbled. And they were delicious and beefy. And I felt like it was like the perfect little size. And I was like, this is amazing. Like, this is perfect. But like, if you gave me a ribeye that looked like that, I'd be like, I gotta split it 3 ways, and I can't
Yep.
do that, but there's so many different ways to enjoy Wagyu. And like you said, it's not about just the max marbling all the time. It's about the eating experience and the tenderness. And when you eat that piece of Wagyu, whether it's Japanese black or red, you get that beautiful tenderness. You're going to get that butteriness because they're both going to be marbled. And they're going to taste a little bit different because of the terroir and the beefiness and the genetics. But like, you got to find that perfect spot. But I'm looking for that great balance. That's what I'm really looking for when I'm eating Wagyu. So sometimes if I'm looking at some full blood, I might want to have a leaner cut because I might want a terrace major full blood, and then I'm going to go F1 cross New York strip or purebred New York strip. And sometimes that's perfect for me. And then, like I keep saying, I kind of want to try, I don't think I've tried a black and red mixed, 50-50 or full blood Wagyu. That's to me sounds like something that might be perfect for me. But have you,
Oh, absolutely.
tried that before? I'm sure
Yeah, so looking at the red blacks cross, so they do complement each other extremely well, right? Yeah. So we talked about crossbreeding or mentioned it just briefly, bringing the strengths of some different breeds together. And the beauty of that red black Wagyu cross, they are both full blood Wagyu or 100% Wagyu, right? So it's all Japanese origin.
Yeah.
And so both have got all those similarities we just talked about. But then there are some differences, right? And they're complementary differences. So when you cross the two, it's a crossbred. So you do get the benefit of hybrid vigor or heterosis. So it's a 2 + 2 = 5 situation, right? Where the calf will outperform the average of its parents.
Okay.
If you look at that crossbreeding situation. But because the parents are similar, we're going to get a consistent beef eating experience. Okay. We're going to capitalize on breed complementarity between those two different breeds and say, hey, we're going to bring together some of the best of both. And it makes an awesome beef eating experience. And again, even talking about, like you mentioned, purebreds there and things like that. An interesting finding, as I've chatted with other breeders and what other folks have run into, on the genetics end or in the world where I operate relative to the finished product, I think sometimes it would be human nature, again, when we talk about saying like, well, there's this spectrum, right? And maybe, the max marbling on one end. And theoretically, as we get away from a 100% Japanese full blood and go down to a purebred, which would be 15/16 or better, so above 93.75% Akaushi or Black Wagyu, we would assume, like, well, it's not 100%, so maybe we're giving up, 6 or 7% of quality. Maybe it's a little bit lesser, right? Or it's not quite as good as a full blood. And the interesting thing, and I've observed this in my operation, it's been observed at Bar or Wagyu, which would be, one of your largest and longest tenured Black Wagyu operations. Yep. It's been observed in Australia as they've gathered data on purebreds, right? So cattle that are 6%, 6.755% another breed. Quite often the purebreds are outperforming the full bloods, right? So it is possible to say, hey, we're going above and beyond the performance of the 100% full bloods, even in things like chasing max marbling, or even in things like chasing max growth curve, or even in things like chasing, carcass weight or things like that, to get as many pounds of beef off that carcass as possible. So just an interesting thing that I guess, it flies in the face a little bit of maybe the conventional, or I don't even know if I want to say conventional wisdom, but maybe just the human nature to say like, well, 100% Japanese should be the best, right? And the 50% Japanese, the F1, the half blood calf, should be kind of the bottom end, right? And this purebred at 93.75% in between the 2 points should be kind of like almost as good, but in some cases is going as good or better, right? And is surpassing the 100% Japanese black or Japanese Wagyu performance in both black and red Wagyu. So anyway, just an interesting observation there that I share just to say, hey, it's okay to maybe challenge convention and to realize that just because it's not 100% doesn't mean it's not the best, or just because it's red Wagyu versus black Wagyu doesn't mean it's not the best. There's the more we learn about genetics, the more I guess we realize we don't know.
Yeah, it's funny because I talked to Desi of the Triple Crown Steak Challenge, and she said some of the F1s perform better than some of the full bloods, and because it's really about like genetics, like you said. So there is that spectrum, a lower end full blood and a higher end F1. They could cross, Well, and one thing I would throw in here, Evan, when we talk about kind of what that finished product is going to be, and this is one of the things I enjoy in the work I do specifically with purebred and or full blood Akaushi or red Wagyu. You can take the same animal genetically, even if they're identical, right? So the exact same animal,
So take flush mates, right? So full siblings, full siblings. We can take those animals and run them through a different feed protocol, depending on what it is we do or don't want to do for a beef feeding experience, right? So for example, I mean, we can finish them with no corn at all, right? So just a straight alfalfa finish. That is going to take longer, right? That animal will be older at harvest. It is not going to be the max marbling approach. It just isn't, right?
Totally.
Now that there'd be pros and cons or different genetics that do different things in that finishing setting, but it is not the max marbling approach. It's still a wonderful beef eating experience. That's going to be more like an upper 2/3 choice or low prime kind of a finish is what you're looking for there as far as the volume of marbling. And a different flavor, right? I mean, it is definitively distinct and will very much reflect what kind of forage it's finished on, right?
Ooh,
but the same animal genetically, and it wouldn't matter whether it's a black Wagyu or a red Wagyu or a full blood or an F1 or purebred, whatever it may be. But if you finish it on no corn, you're going to get one thing. You finish it on 100 days of corn, right? You might be looking at more like a low prime kind of a finish there. We bump that up to like a 300 days, finish type approach, which would be what you most commonly see in Akaushi and Red Wagyu to kind of be your standard. It'll be about 300 days on corn there at the end. That's going to be beyond prime plus. I mean, it's a beautiful steak. Or if you want to go for the full on, we're kind of chasing like a Japanese style finish, like max marbling approach. That's a 500 day on corn finish. So again, just to take even the same genetics, even identical genetics, but we can feed them different depending on what it is you want to do. As far, I mean, each of those is going to have a different cost to it. Each of those is going to produce a different steak. And that's one of the things I like, I guess, to be able to offer my clients. I tell them, look, even if you buy, anyone, so we sell full blood Akaushi steers, for example, in our auctions. And I'm like, you tell me, what do you want for a beef eating experience? You finish it appropriately. You can take the same animal and produce 4 very different steaks with just those 4 differences in a feeding period or in a finish protocol.
There's just so much nuance, to it. And
it's as much art as science.
And that's cool. But it's funny kind of going back to the 2% versus the 98% consumer. Nobody really realizes that if you're not with the animals and you're in the industry, you really don't realize that. You just kind of think that they're being force fed corn on a dirt field. And cause I saw, Food Inc. once and I'm like, oh, the cows are bad, and so that, that's really why we started this podcast. Cause we're like, wow, we're talking to these ranchers and like things are a lot different than what we really thought, and it's really nice to talk about it and to meet people like you who are so passionate about it and can explain the process and the nuance to people so they can go, wow, maybe I should try that. Maybe it kind of takes the fear away, like knowing that you are producing this and that you care about all these little things that go into feeding and raising, really takes the fear to the general public. And like I keep saying, that's really what we're trying to push out there and go, hey guys, like it's okay. You can try it, but try it from these good people who are registered, know exactly what they're doing. Because, to the general public's point, there's a lot of bad cattle raising out there and a lot of bad Wagyu out there too. So
Oh, absolutely. Well, that's been an interest. I just recorded a podcast episode, I guess 2 episodes back with my butcher, and so he actually feeds full blood Akaushi. So animals that they're genetically are genetics. And then they go just a couple miles down the road. They're fed by him and harvested by him. And the reason he got into these full blood Akaushi was he had run into so many half blood Wagyu that had been so disappointing as far as what that beef eating experience was. He had been so disappointed. And now this is not to say, Wagyu's the problem, right? No. The thing we're looking at in this scenario was you had these people that totally unknown genetics, right? As far as what the Wagyu genetic component was. And then that frankly had zero experience in feeding the cattle, right? So we had no idea what kind of a finish protocol those cattle were on, had no idea to tell, hey, if this animal's ready for harvest or not. They just kind of brought it in when they had a date scheduled with the butcher. And so he had seen so many subpar, and that's the hard part, is if somebody has in their head, hey, Wagyu equals A5, like it is the same thing in my head, right? That is what it is. And then they go and they get a Wagyu Holstein F1 that sat on sticks in somebody's backyard through a drought and then got harvested in the fall without ever putting on any fat at all, whether that's via, a quality grass finish or any of those corn finishes. And they went in thin. it not only is it not going to be this fantastic beef eating experience they had in their head, it's going to be below what just conventional or traditional beef would be as far as the quality of the eating experience. Because it's not, no one of these pieces by itself is going to get you there, right? If all you have is genetics, it can still be a subpar eating experience. If all you had is a great finish period, but it's, you don't have the genetics in play, it's still not going to be what it could have been. So all these things have to come together, and it's very challenging for a consumer to come in saying, hey, Wagyu is just one thing. It is just one word in my head. But that is so difficult. If they have one bad beef eating experience like that from one, I mean, even if it's not necessarily anyone with malicious intent, like I hate to call them a bad actor, but somebody said, hey, take this thing's half Wagyu, and they went and harvested it not knowing what they're doing. One poor beef eating experience, they say, oh, Wagyu's a scam, or it's not any good, or, it's not what it could have been. And yeah, I mean, that is challenging for the consumer to navigate, and I'm glad there's folks like the meat dudes doing their best to help people navigate that.
Absolutely, man. I mean, the expectation is already so high when you hear the term Wagyu, right?
Yep.
And yeah, that's why, we've always said from the beginning, like, know where your beef comes from. And it's like, if you know that you can, that this Wagyu is registered by American Wagyu Association or Akaushi Association or the Australian Association, but there's verified genetics, and you understand that everything is tracked and traceable all the way back to the original animals that came here. That is so important, because like you said, somebody might just have a Wagyu. They don't know where it came from. They don't know what's been in it. It's just like conventional beef, this is product of the U.S., but it was raised in Brazil and shipped to Mexico, and then it was shipped to Hawaii, but now it's back up to Canada, and you have no idea where it's been or who's put anything into it, and so knowing where your beef comes from, knowing that, like, a lot of there's so many great Wagyu ranchers out there that go birth to harvest, and know exactly what goes into their beef. A lot of great ranchers out there, not just Wagyu ranchers, a lot of great small ranchers out there. So if you know where your beef comes from, you will be able to hopefully dodge some of that shoddy Wagyu out there, man.
Right.
That's why we're doing the map. Because I mean, honestly, that is like one of the biggest reasons. I went on Facebook and I was looking for Wagyu, and I click on it, and some guy, some ranch, and I click on it. I don't even know where the ranch is. It doesn't even tell me where the ranch is. I'm like, so are you just somebody that maybe just bought some and then just, is just shipping it out, have no idea what's in it, how it was fed, how it was raised? Was it was it under stress the whole time? No idea, but you're just shipping it out there and calling it Wagyu, and it's not registered. There's no, like, if I go to someone's page and I can't tell where the ranch is, that's a pretty good, indication that maybe it's not the best thing,
Right. Well, and I think, you bring up a great point there, Evan, that it's such a challenge for the consumer to even tell, like, hey, what's going to be good beef and what's not going to be good beef. Like, that is such a challenge to navigate and to just try to even figure out what of this is good and what's not. And, with any challenge, there's also an opportunity, and that's one of the things I look at for people getting into raising Wagyu, whether that's red or black. But people getting into raising Wagyu, I think one of the opportunities that exists is that these scaled operations, now I don't want to say a scaled operation by default is bad, right? Yes. Scaled operations do a wonderful job of producing a cost-effective product for the American consumer, right?
Yes.
And I can appreciate that, right? Like I'm an economics major, right? So like I appreciate their ability to produce food. And the United States food supply is the safest in the world, right? So while I absolutely appreciate they can produce a safe product, they can produce a safe and cost-effective product. So very much appreciate what they do and what they do well. But what they cannot do pretty well by default, by operating at that degree of scale, what cannot be done at that point in time is to produce something that is truly fully traceable end to end. Like, I can guarantee you, if you go in, I spent time this last summer in a facility that harvests 6,000 head a day, right? Incredibly efficient, right? And my hat's off to them. They do a wonderful job at keeping the American public fed, right? There is a need for scaled, low cost operators. There's a need for it, right? Like the ultra premium end of the market is not for everyone. It's not even going to be for me every day of the week. As far as just, the most expensive product isn't always going to be the one that we can do, right? Yes. But the thing that I do think it leaves wide open as an opportunity, right, for a small scale producer, like when I talk about what I'm doing with my butcher here, we know literally, that animal, was conceived here, was calved here, was raised here. It's been DNA verified. We know exactly which animal went to exactly which feedlot 2 miles down the road. We know exactly who fed it. We know exactly what they fed it. We know for exactly how long. And we know exactly, when that animal's harvested, down to the person buying the beef, we'll literally know what animal, what individual it came from, not just what program or what general idea. Like we know, like literally it was born this day, bred this way, fed that way, harvested at this point. You know exactly what it is. Now that's going to be more challenging. That is going to be more expensive. Like specialty by definition will never be the cheapest, right? But there are the two sides of American agriculture today. Both are needed. And there's opportunity in both, right? But there's basically specialty and there's scale. There's the two different pieces, and both are going to continue to operate. And if unless you're going to come in with an enormous amount of money and an incredibly efficient process, the opportunity to come in at scale is fairly limited, right? The guys that do that are incredibly efficient. Like they are so good at what they do. Let them do what they do well, which is produce the most cost-effective product, right? But what the opportunity they leave wide open is to produce the absolute best product. Not to say the other one's horrendous. I'm not here to attack my fellow agriculturalists, right? It's like the infighting in Wagyu we're talking about. I am not here to say they're bad people because they are not, right? They're producing a cheap product. But what they cannot do is produce one with the degree of traceability, with the degree of quality that we can do here. They cannot take, these full bloods, these purebreds, these documented DNA verified animals where we know literally everything about them. They cannot provide that product at the price point they do, at the volume they do, at the scale they do.
Right. And if that is important to you and you have enough money to be able to do that, then a lot of people will do that. They're looking for that. That's why people buy that nice tequila out of Jalisco.
Right.
Champagne. They might not drink champagne every night. Maybe they're drinking some nice sparkling wine from California, which is also really good. But it's every once in a while you might want to grab the nice stuff, and there's totally a market for that, and even on that, yes, Wagyu is going to be more expensive, but it's not. When I say that, I always say it with like an asterisk, where it's like, it's not going to be out there insanely expensive because of the types of cuts in the cow, right? And when you go, like, we'll go to a Whole Foods here, and we're in Seattle, right? And so I'll look at, like, they have New York strip, tenderloin, ribeye, maybe a couple of other things, and like, that's mostly what they have. And if you want to say, a prime ribeye versus a prime, or versus a Wagyu ribeye, yes, the Wagyu ribeye is going to be more expensive because of all those things we just talked about. But you can also look for, if you go to a specialty butcher shop, maybe a Wagyu Denver, a Wagyu bavette, a Wagyu skirt steak, which is going to be a way better eating experience and probably the same, if not less money than a prime ribeye is going to be out there. So there's so many different types of things that we can do. So if you can't spend $70 on a full blood Wagyu ribeye, maybe you can spend $25 on a Wagyu's full bloods, Denver's Abuton. And
absolutely.
Amazing.
Well, and this has been one of the things that I have noticed, even just my family eats. Now we're spoiled rotten, right? Like we're sitting here as snobs because we do happen to produce this stuff. And so that is all that's in the freezer, right? It is straight. It's full blood Akaushi Wagyu. But to your point, I have just been so impressed. Like, I have not gone into a cut that I've been disappointed by. Like, there's not been anywhere that I'm like, oh, this one's tough, or this one's not flavorful, or, oh, well, that's too bad, or like, we should have ground that one. It is so good. And I think that's an opportunity, even within things like, if someone's going to take on for the first time raising cattle, right? And you go and buy a couple of Akaushi or Black Wagyu steers, right? And feed those out. You can go into that and say, hey, look, now we can get pretty well anything that can be cut. Now, you're still going to get plenty of ground beef. Like, people have got to understand that whole process and what that is. But when I cut ours, I don't necessarily cut a ton of roast. Now, I love a good roast, but it's just for simplicity's sake, right? I can cook a steak quicker. We can serve a steak quicker. It's just easier. It's not as big, right, as what a roast is. So we've taken a lot of traditionally roast cuts, right? So we're taking the round and we're doing round steaks, right? We're taking the chuck and we're doing chuck steaks, and they are awesome. I'll sit down and eat a round steak off of an Akaushi Wagyu blows away even some of the top end steaks off your more traditional breeds, right?
Yeah.
Or your more traditional beef. And that has been such an awesome and enjoyable thing. And that's why I share with people when they come here all these different cuts. It's not a matter of like, well, here's a couple of these primo, the big names, right?
Yeah.
The only steak cuts that most people know are going to be like a ribeye or a New York.
Yeah.
And there's just not that many pounds of ribeye in New York off of a full-fledged animal, right?
Yeah.
But when the round steak is this fantastic, or the skirt steak is this awesome, or the chuck steak is that great, I mean, all of it is so good. Or I mean, the burger just completely ruins you. I mean, the poor kid that spends his hard-earned money trying to buy my daughter a steak someday. My daughter's 6. But
I say the same thing.
To impress her. Anyway, the baseline has been set high because it is all so good.
I know. I say the same thing. I'm like, oh man, someone's gonna grill you a steak one day, and you're gonna be like, what is this crap, man? I've been eating
right
whole life,
Yes. Yeah. My daughter is spoiled, no doubt.
I love it, dude. And oh man, talking about some of those underrated cuts, we're getting in a lot of Wagyu. People are shipping us Wagyu from all over the US now. We're getting a lot of like top rounds because we want to, utilize it differently. And I've heard a few people say they like to slice the top round, sous vide it, and then kind of reverse sear it, or we're braising it, we're smoking it, the bottom round as well. We're getting a lot of chuck steaks too because you're grilling those up. I mean, it is unbelievable. I mean, if you got a chuck steak from a prime, conventional beef, it might be okay, but this is like a little ribeye. You're like, this is a mini ribeye. It's tender. It still has a little chew because it is from the chuck, but it's not anything insane. It's like a good chew. But we're looking for like that ultimate, like, what's the next thing? Some people like to slice the London broil into steaks and grill them. Have you found anything else in the back end, the tail end of the cow that you've really been impressed with?
Yeah, no, it's been really, really fun for me, Evan, because like I mentioned, I'm kind of at the point, truthfully, I'm educating myself on the beef industry. Now, I've spent a lifetime in the cattle industry, and it's easy to think they're one and the same. But I mean, truthfully, they require the same animal, right? But that's honestly about where the similarities end, right? Totally. I mean, I know the live animal front, back, and sideways is what I do all day, every day. Yeah. But then the beef, the finished product, it's a fun and enjoyable new learning experience for me as a cattle producer. And one of the things I've loved is we've gone through and harvested, like I mentioned, we've tested some of these different genetics, obviously, but then we've also tested some different finish protocols on the beef. And then to your point, testing some of these different cuts and then some of these different cook methods. All of what I do is painfully simple, right? I am not going to be someone that I'm like, boy, I have got this resume, like I can smoke it, I can grill it, I can do all these, it has got to be painfully simple, right? I've got 400 cows and 4 kids and no time for really a whole lot of anything else, right? And I'm sure I'm not alone in that. I'm sure pretty well everybody is fighting those same constraints on their schedule. So simplicity for me is king, even when it comes to things like these cuts, right? And we talked about earlier how most things are either, healthy or delicious, and Akaushi is both. And one of the things I love with the way I'm currently cutting and cooking, we're cutting pretty much everything into 1-inch steaks. I mean, straight through all of it. Like anything that can make a steak is making a steak, and it's making it so wildly simple. You know what I mean? It's not being overthought. It's not being overdone. I'm not coming in wildly educated. It is just straight. It's all 1-inch steaks or it's a burger. You know what I mean? With the exception of the brisket. That is the only exception, right? Yeah. Like everything else, it is 1-inch steaks or it is burger. And even something as painfully simple as that, right? And then it's all getting frozen because obviously we're storing it, over time. Yeah. And then it's going straight into the sous vide. And depending on the cut, I mean, we have cooked anything literally anywhere from 2 hours clear out to 72 hours. I mean, if you go on the internet, it is all over the place on what people think they ought to do for sous vide. But the beauty of a situation like that, right? If we say, hey, 1-inch steaks straight through, right? And we say all of the cooking, it is sous vide straight through from 2 hours, clear on out to 72, depending on, tougher cuts we leave in longer, right? And I mean, tougher, right? I mean, something that has more chew, relatively speaking, we're going to leave in longer. But I mean, it is just fantastic. And so coming down to that point of most of the time, it's either convenient or it's healthy and delicious, right? I mean, healthy and delicious is like this labor of love, this job, right? Yeah. But to get something that convenient that it is like, I don't have to know how to do the cut sheet. I just said 1-inch steaks. I don't have to know how to cook. I literally just grab it out of the freezer, and it is the degree of convenience of a microwave meal,
Yeah.
right? But this is full on world class eating experience, you
That's
know?
crazy.
And that is just awesome to me, you know?
Yeah.
And so like we'll take all those 1-inch steaks, I'll throw in a series of them, and we'll throw in a bunch of different cuts ranging all the way from, you know, a tenderloin New York or ribeye all the way up to, you know, we'll have some chuck steaks in, we'll have some round steaks in, things like that. And the only difference between any of them is I pull and eat the more tender stuff like a tenderloin, New York, or ribeye first, and I'll let the other sit in the sous vide longer. So we'll sit there and we can eat off of it 2 or 3 meals, whatever else, because you're sitting there anaerobic in the sous vide environment, right?
Yeah.
You're sitting there at a high enough temperature. You're not going to have bacterial growth, and it just gets more tender the longer it sits. And we just ate some chuck steak yesterday coming out of that sous vide. And I mean, for the fact that I don't know how to, I'm no wizard with a cut sheet, and I'm no wizard with my cooking experience. Like, oh my word, it was fantastic. And it's a chuck steak. Like, it's supposed to be a roast. This is supposed to be the low end beef eating. This is cheaper. I'm on a budget. Like, it was stellar. I would have zero qualms serving that to anyone. It was, I mean, unless I really didn't like them, but like, it was really, like, it was fantastic beef. And anyway, I've just been tickled with the beef eating experience on the Red Wagyu.
That's so cool, man. I love you just taking everything. You're just 1-inch steaks. Let's go.
Wildly basic. Wildly simple.
I mean, that's kind of, you know, you're taking almost what the Japanese do. You know, they cut everything, you know, this thin strip on everything, you know, and you know, they not as much shabu shabu. I heard they don't do as much shabu shabu as we think, but it's still that same kind of style of just, you know, thin on the rock cutting, you know, and because I was asked, I'm like, what happens with like A5? Like, they're not like doing ground beef for A5 or like an A5 cow or anything like that, you know, but everything just gets thinly stripped. So it's kind of like what you do, it's more of the American way. Just 1-inch steaks for the consumer. So
yeah. Well, and then you just don't have to know. You know what I mean? Like, if I look at it and I'm like, I'm a cattle producer and I don't know. You know what I mean? Like to say like, oh, I really have a nuanced view of a cut sheet, right? Or of prep methods. I don't expect somebody that's raising a steer for the first time to just have all of this just perfectly dialed. And if I can say, hey, even if you don't have this wildly complex anything, even if all you do is cut straight 1-inch steaks and they all hit the sous vide, I am positive, so long as that animal is bred and fed right, you will like the eating experience. Like, it's on.
I love it. I love it. Keeping it simple, man. It's like meal prepping, you know? Wagyu meal prepping.
Yep. It is it could not be any easier, and it could not be any better to eat. Like, I think it's just an incredibly unique option that way.
Well, what would be, you know, for somebody buying Akaushi the first time, what would be the one steak or one cut that you would tell them to start with?
Oh man, you know what my kids will always request is a tenderloin, but the problem with the tenderloin is it's going to ruin you. Because I mean, right out of the gate, so like the average tenderloin that the average person eats in the average place is wrapped in bacon, right? Because it's incredibly tender, but has little to no flavor, right? So filet mignon is wrapped in bacon. The incredible thing with the Wagyu tenderloin, it is marbled. And it is flavorful and it is incredibly tender. The problem is literally anything is tough by comparison to a Wagyu tenderloin. So if you were only ever going to eat one in your entire life, eat a Wagyu tenderloin, but you know, put the asterisk on there, like you will be ruined. Like nothing else will ever will ever compare. You know,
I agree. Well, let's see. So one of my final questions, I kind of like to see that, you know, what we think about the Wagyu industry in the next maybe 5 to 10 years. So, you know, in the next 5 to 10 years, you know, especially like more of the consumers being like more educated about genetics and feeding and programs, you know, and transparency, where do you see the Wagyu industry really heading? I mean, where do you see it? Because personally, I was in the cannabis industry when it first started, and like now I look at it and it's very funny to see how it is completely different from 10, 15 years ago, where people were like, oh, it makes you stupid. And now it's like, oh, well, I'm having a CBD pill with my, you know, vitamin D pill. So where do you kind of see this, you know, in about 10 years?
Right. Right. Yep. It absolutely will develop. It absolutely will. It already has developed and changed significantly over the course of the last 30 years since those females arrived, or the last 50 since those first bulls came in. And when I look at it, I mentioned previously, I guess, the two different forms in ag of kind of specialty or scale. If somebody's seriously going to be engaged in agriculture, period, including the Wagyu industry, like the production end where I operate, like the live cattle, it is specialty or it is scale. And, frankly, scale, it's enormously capital intensive. There's already some pretty established players. They're doing a good job, right? If you look at your large Wagyu programs, you look at Snake River Farms, you look at Heartbrand, they're doing a good job, right? These are good cattle, good programs, good beef. They are consistent, right? Like if somebody needs a consistent product, right? They're not cheap, but they're consistent. They do a good job. That scaled operation, I see those programs continuing to grow, right? I think they're doing good work. I think they'll continue to grow. So I guess the point I'm getting at is if people are looking to get into Wagyu or get into Akaushi or engage in the production end of this, right? Raise a couple steers, harvest your own beef. The opportunity is on that specialty end, right? Yeah. And it is to say, hey, we are going to breed these specific to this ranch. I guess this is how we breed them, right?
Yeah.
This is how at this ranch, this is how we feed them, right? This is how we've decided we want to go about that finish period. This is how we cut them. This is how we cook them. This is all the pieces to make a unique beef eating experience. So I think what you will see is a further acceleration over the course of the next 10, 15 years. The big players are going to keep getting bigger. Like that, there's a demand for that. There's a need for that. Yeah. They provide value, and they're going to be rewarded for that, right?
Yeah.
But I do think that there is absolutely a place for these specialty operations to provide something that a scaled operation can't, right? Don't look at it as a challenge that you got to go be them, right? That they're 10, 20, 30 years ahead of you, right? Like, go ahead and focus on leaning it into what it is you do well, right? Knowing what that animal is exactly from end to end and making your own beef eating experience, right? People are going to want, we're already seeing this shift towards people wanting to know. That's been happening, gosh, for 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
People want to know where their feed their food comes from, right?
Totally.
People want to know how it was raised. Yeah. People want to know where it was raised. People want to know who raised it. People want to know what is it? Like they'd like to have an answer instead of it being like, well, this is a commodity food product that could have any one of, you can have a hamburger patty that's got 1,500 different DNA strands in it because there's 6,000 animals killed in a day. Like, of course, I'm surprised there were only 1,500, present in this patty, right? Crazy. Like it is like, they're two different production environments. Both will continue to exist. There's value in both. One will be the least cost operator, and that is the scaled outfit, right? Cool. But there is and will continue to be a need and a demand for that specialty operation that can give more answers than what is logistically possible at scale. So that's what I see continuing and accelerating going forward. And the people that can lean into that and say, hey, you know what? We are going to be radically transparent. We are more than willing to let people know exactly what this is. People are willing to pay for that. And so I think you'll continue to see success for some of these smaller, specialty operations producing things like high quality Wagyu beef that is unique to them.
I like that. I like that because one thing that worries me is it's this great little industry right now. Like it is so small, right? Like we pretty much know almost everybody in this industry.
Yes.
But how do we keep it quality as it grows? That's like the big thing, right? As you scale, it's really hard. There are going to be like the Budweisers are going to come in, and you're going to be like, okay, now we got the old Budweiser Wagyu, like, so how do we, I'm always trying to think of like knowing where your beef comes from is the first way to like combat that, and supporting all of these smaller local ranches that do it the right way, like you say, to have the transparency, because there's going to be a lot of people that come in that may not have the transparency, or you may not love what they do, or they can't tell you where the ranch is at, so looking for these things and understanding who your rancher is, that's one of the biggest things that we are a huge proponent of. And that's how we started our restaurants here in Seattle. So yeah, we know Farmer Paul out there at Pure Country Farms. We've met him. We've shook his hand, and we know exactly what goes into those cattle. And he showed us what these are. We got to hold baby pigs, and, we got to do everything. And like, really, like, we know everything about that ranch. And that's not, it's not going to be the case for every single person out there, but the more transparency you have, the more you can like learn about who's providing your food, the safer it's going to be and the more comfortable you're going to be eating it. And hopefully we can
absolutely
keep that quality.
And I would tell people, don't be afraid to try raising your own. I'm not going to say that that's the right fit for everyone. Obviously, like there are logistical constraints to live cattle. There are places they can be, there are places they can't be. So not everyone is going to have that opportunity. But that is another thing that I definitely see continuing to change in the next 10 to 15 years, especially as COVID hit and so many people went remote, right? Or those remote positions really accelerated, right? So much work. I mean, you and I are sitting in completely different physical locations, right? And having this conversation and recording it, we're going to distribute it and all these things. Like the things that are available that are options remotely are greater than they have ever been. And what that has led to, there are more people living in a place where they could house a few cows than what there ever has been before, right? Historically, it's been just about everybody's in the city, and there are a few people that are out and about and maybe have access to the sheer geography to be able to house a few animals. But there are more people than ever before, and that trend will not slow. You'll see more and more people continue to move out to the country, or even, I mean, call it out to the suburbs, but more so out to the country. I mean, frankly, at this point, you can be in the middle of absolute nowhere and hook to Starlink and do a lot of jobs. So the point that I'm making there would be, don't be afraid to raise your own, you know, and while that won't be the fit for everyone, that might seem, I guess, daunting. But truthfully, it's really quite a rewarding thing to say, hey, we can take a couple of these live animals and literally raise them end to end to where you know everything you could possibly know about them. And that is, I mean, that's the space in which I operate. You know what I mean? Is a lot of the people I sell to are just barely getting engaged in agriculture for the first time in any way, shape, or form, or are just barely getting engaged in cattle for the first time in any way, shape, or form.
Wow.
Right? And don't be afraid to take that on and say, you know what, like, is it going to turn out exactly like whatever you tried somewhere else? Probably not, but that's okay. To go ahead and try raising your own, try taking them straight through. Like, what a neat opportunity, you know, to get into, to have that personal connection with your own food, right? And you decide exactly every piece of what you want for how that animal goes from the live animal on your property to the finished product on your plate. It's a neat opportunity that I think more people than ever will be able to engage in, and more people than ever should engage in the next 10 to 15 years.
I like that. And you know, you made a good point, because I don't think that a lot of people would not have even thought of that before COVID. It would have been like, there's no way I could ever do this. And still some people may think that way, but I think there are a lot more, like you said, that would like, you know what, I could maybe actually do this. And so it became a little bit more of an option for people, kind of changed a lot of the mindset out there. And yeah, that would be cool. I mean, the more people that are doing it, the more education that's out there, the less fear people are going to have about it. And I think the more it's going to just hit the market and have people just understand that it's okay to choose your Wagyu and that it's a spectrum and you don't got to spend $200 a pound to get it anymore, you know. And once we get that out there, yeah, I think that we're going to slowly see that kind of just change. And once we get the good stuff, you know, or once we get people to going back to the butcher shops and seeing, like, you know, understanding that these butchers know exactly where this meat comes from. I mean, that's like the first step for me. That's what we always kind of say, like, don't always go to the grocery store. You can go to some great butcher shops and support these people, because generally they're going to know where the meat comes from, maybe a little bit more.
Yes.
So, yeah, man. Well, Seth, how do they get a hold of you, man? How, you know, can you explain a little bit of your podcast, and then and how can people get in touch if they are interested in learning more about Akaushi or raising Akaushi?
Sure, you bet, absolutely, yeah, and appreciate you having me here, Evan, and would invite anybody that's listening to this podcast, if you're catching this on the Meat Dudes channel, to take a look at Got Any Cows is the name of our podcast. That is going to be on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. It is a full video podcast, and so you can see the live cattle. You can see all the people that we interview. We usually toggle back and forth. We release an episode every 2 weeks, and we'll go back and forth between an episode where I'm out in the cattle, kind of walking you through what those animals are, and even options on animals to purchase. We run a monthly auction for anyone that's interested in engaging in purchasing cattle for the first time. A lot of the folks I deal with are first-time buyers, and so looking to help people that are in that 98% of the U.S. population that hasn't had a chance to engage in production agriculture. And quite often, these scaled outfits aren't going to slow down long enough to explain it. That's one of the things I want to do on the Got Any Cows podcast, is help people understand what it takes to get into these cattle, and then all those different pieces that impact being able to raise animals. So we toggle back and forth each episode between an episode that's in the cows and then an episode that we've got an industry expert on. And we've touched everything from how to feed these cattle. So we've had a veterinarian on, I've had my banker on, we've talked marketing, we've talked forage production as far as the things to feed the cows. I mean, we've talked everything and anything that touches cows. So would invite anybody that wants to take a look at that. Our website is gotanycows.com, or it's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or you can watch the videos on YouTube. The videos are actually going to be on Apple Podcasts as well, and I think they'll start getting on Spotify in short order. So
nice, man. And, I talked to, especially doing this map, I talked to a lot of Wagyu ranchers out there, and a lot of people kind of started funneling me towards you. So I know you are a great resource for this. I've heard from a ton of ranchers about you, and I was like, okay, I got to talk to this guy then. I got to get him on, So absolutely, you have the meat, you are meat dude, you have the meat dude's blessing, because I've heard from so many ranchers about what you do and how you've helped them. So, and I think that's cool. And I mean, this has been such a great conversation, man. And I love that, talking about Wagyu, like we want to promote Wagyu very positively. And I love that you being in the, the Akaushi industry, you're still talking positively about Japanese black. And you're talking about how it's, there is something for everyone out there. And that is such a huge mission of ours, just to let people know there's Wagyu out there for you. And you can try it. You can get so many different things. You can try different price points, and you just gotta kind of find what you're looking for. Maybe it's something on we always talked to a grass-fed rancher, and he said, this isn't a steak that people are going to eat every single night, but maybe it's a great one on your Monday or a Tuesday steak. It's a different day of the week. And I just feel like that's such a great motto for people in the industry, and for people to hear that, there is different types out there. So go out there and experience a lot of the different types of Wagyu, and go out there and try the different types of cuts. So you're not just buying the ribeyes out there. So many things you can do. And Seth, we learned so much about Akaushi, man. Thank you again. This has been so awesome. I feel like I just got my degree in Akaushi here, man. I understand it a little bit more, and now I can talk to other people about it a little bit better now. So I really appreciate that, man.
You bet. Well, appreciate you taking the time to record, Evan. I think it's awesome to have somebody on that has the beef experience that you do, and that's coming from that opposite end of the spectrum, where, like I mentioned, so much left for me to learn, about the cuts and about how to cook them and about all these things that impact the eating experience, and definitely feel like we're aligned in trying to bring as much information as we can about whether it's the live animal or the steak on the plate out to that 98% of people that may not understand, or may not have their heads wrapped around it. And I'm learning more every day. I appreciate you taking the time to chat with me. I really feel like there'll be some things of value in this conversation for people listening, whether they're coming at it from the meat end or the live cattle end. So thank you for your time.
Man. I agree. We've done a bunch of things, and I am really excited to get this out. And I think that people are going to totally get a different perspective on Akaushi, and like you said, just on the meat eating experience. And so, I really appreciate you, man. This has been awesome, man. And like we said, I think we're both going to put this out, and so hopefully a lot of people get some great value out of it, and we can just keep pushing the positive Wagyu mission out there, and get this out to more people. Because once you say, like you said, once you have it, man, you'll be ruined. It's game over.
Right. Yeah. I say don't try it once, because there's no going back.
Exactly. Well, Seth, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it again, and hopefully we can our paths will cross here. I know we're pretty close. You're in Idaho, I'm in Washington, so maybe we'll have to get out there one of these days and check out the ranch.
We'd love to have you anytime. There's an Akaushi steak in the sous vide for you.
Let's go. All right, man. I appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Sounds good. Take care. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Got Any Cows podcast. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts, and visit us anytime at gotanycows.com.